A woman longing to be young again learns of a secret treatment that grants her everlasting youth, but there's a catch, and she soon comes to regret her decision to live young forever. Welcome to Movie Splain. In today's video, we'll be recapping a film called Death Becomes Her. Enjoy the video. The year is 1978. Madeline Ashton is performing on Broadway in an elaborate dance number. In the audience is a woman she grew up with, Helen Sharp, and her fiancé Ernest Menville. He's mesmerized by Madeline's performance, much to Helen's dismay. They go to meet her in her dressing room after the show. Once Madeline learns that Ernest is a renowned plastic surgeon, she begins to work her charms on him. Helen shortly after feels that Ernest has fallen for Madeline. She mentions that Madeline had stolen many of her partners in the past, and that she took Ernest to meet her before they got married only to see if he would pass the Madeline test. Ernest assures her that nothing is going on, but her fears soon prove to be correct when their engagement falls apart and Ernest marries Madeline. This causes Helen to fall into a depressive spiral. 7 years later, she's living with numerous cats in an untidy rundown apartment, in which she gorges on ready-made cans of frosting and becomes obese. Her days generally consist of watching a film starring Madeline in which her character is killed, with Helen finding joy in rewinding this scene over and over again. After she is evicted for failing to pay rent, Helen is put into a mental institution. But even after several months of therapy, she still has not shown any improvement. Her psychologist advises her that she needs to completely eliminate Madeline from her mind. In a twisted way, Helen takes this advice to heart. 7 years later, Madeline Ashton's career has slowly waned. Now obsessed with holding on to her once youthful looks, she receives an invitation for herself and Ernest to attend a book release party from Helen. Madeline is eager to attend, preparing for the event by visiting her cosmetic surgeon, demanding they do another procedure. They refuse. The risks are too high because of how close it is to her previous surgery. Her surgeon, seeing that she has an insatiable desire for perfection, empties the room. He turns off the security camera and tells her of a woman named Lyle von Rumen, who can give her what she wants, but it's very expensive and only a select group of people know about the treatment. He gives her a card with Lyle's address on it. Ernest, meanwhile, has become an alcoholic mortician and is miserable in his married life, living only to provide his wife the best of the best while she lives free of responsibility. They go to Helen's book release party for a novel called Forever Young. Madeline is eagerly hoping to see an overweight, miserable woman only to find Helen is now slender, youthful, and beautiful. She begins to lose her mind over Helen's transformation, now drowning in envy. Helen and Ernest go to a secluded area to talk. He breaks down and confesses to her that he made a terrible mistake, leaving her and marrying Madeline. She has reduced him to a depressed, lonely man who works a job he hates just to give her a life she's unappreciative of. Helen feels very sorry for him and tells him that she warned him. That night, Ernest is in the bedroom with an old photo of himself and Helen. He thinks of the happy moments they shared together. Madeline leaves the house. She goes to see a young man with whom she has been having an affair with, only to find that he's cheating on her. He tells her that she's gotten too old for him. Now more upset than ever, Madeline then looks at the card she was given and goes to see Lyle von Rumen. Lyle resides in a large Gothic mansion, surrounded by long-haired male servants. She reveals to Madeline a potion that will restore her youth and make her live forever. If she agrees to take it, she will have to keep the potion a secret. And being a part of the secret group that knows of the potion, she will be given a pin to wear. After some convincing words and a small demo, Madeline pays the hefty sum and downs the potion. However, Lyle now mentions a warning.
Now a warning?
Simply telling Madeline to take care of your body since you would be together a long time. Before she leaves the mansion, Madeline looks in a mirror and is amazed to see her wrinkles disappear and her body become taut and firm again. She remarks to the guard that she's a girl again, and the guard simply puts his finger to his lips, indicating the level of secrecy Madeline must now adhere to. Meanwhile, Ernest has been visited by Helen, who attempts to seduce him into helping her kill Madeline. He tells her he'd rather get a divorce, but she scares him by telling him that divorce, especially in California, is exactly what Madeline would want, and she'll make him suffer. Her plan is simple. After drugging Madeline with an alcohol-based tranquilizer called Narcanol during dinner, they'll stage a drunk driving accident and kill her. By the time the autopsy would be performed, the Narcanol would have dissolved, leaving behind only traces of alcohol in her blood. Ernest still can't go through with it, but she tells him that it's the only way for them to finally be free and be together. She also mentions that it's best for him to get rid of Madeline because she's killing him. Hearing this, he becomes convinced and thinks to himself that killing Madeline would be nothing but self-defense. He agrees to get rid of her. Helen leaves shortly thereafter, and Madeline returns home, happy to be youthful again. Ernest now has the courage to confront Madeline and tells her that he can't stand her anymore. She insults him, relentlessly attacking his masculinity. He finally loses it when she picks on his pecker, telling him that he's not a real man because he's flaccid. He grabs her by the neck and chokes her on the edge of the stairs. He snaps out of it and apologizes. She loses her balance, and just as he reaches out to grab her, she says, "Hurry up, wimp." So he pushes her down. She tumbles, breaks her neck, and dies. Unsure what to do next, Ernest places a call to Helen, telling her that Madeline is dead. She tells him to call the police and say that he was on the phone with her, but then heard Madeline scream. When he turned around, he saw her fall to her death. While they're discussing more details, Madeline wakes up and approaches Ernest. She asks him why he pushed her down the stairs. Seeing that her head is twisted backwards, he backs up and screams in terror. She tries to call the police but can't get the phone to her head. Only then does she realize that her ass isn't where it's supposed to be. Ernest convinces himself that this is just a case of a dislocated neck. She straightens her neck, but the bones are still broken. The two then go to the local hospital. While there, the doctor is surprised when his stethoscope picks up no pulse. He also takes a look at her neck and takes her temperature too. He's almost lost for words. He takes a sip of Ernest's alcohol and then some pills before telling Madeline that her heart has stopped beating. Her temperature is also too low for any living creature, and she should be dead as a result of all of the injuries she's sustained. The doctor then tells them he's going to get a second opinion. Ernest touches her wrist and her forehead and then realizes the doctor is right. She really is dead. Madeline then faints. Ernest rushes out of the room to get the doctor, only to find that he's died of a heart attack. He returns to the room and finds they've taken his wife to the morgue. After finding her there, Ernest declares that Madeline is some kind of miracle and decides to take care of her. It seems he totally forgot Helen's plans, but Helen hasn't. Returning to the mansion, Ernest notes that Madeline has lost color and goes to the mortuary where he works to pick up formaldehyde, tubes, paints, and other things. He then paints her body and does her makeup. However, this process is interrupted by Helen, who has come in regards to Ernest's panicked call. As their voices get higher, Madeline overhears Helen's intended death plot for her and appears before the two, brandishing a shotgun. Madeline ends up blowing Helen into the garden pool. Ernest is freaked about having a dead body on his hands, but gets another shock when Helen emerges from the pool, still alive, save for a giant hole through her abdomen. As Ernest watches, the two women then accuse the other of taking Lyle's potion, and then engage in a battle, swinging garden shovels, at which point Ernest goes back upstairs. During the fight, the two end up hurting each other physically, but then begin to lay out their own emotional feelings before finally coming to a reconciliation. Going to Ernest, they say they have made up and ask him to fix them. Ernest agrees, but on the condition that he is allowed to leave them forever once he has finished. The girls agree immediately to never contacting him again. After repairing the girls, they are at first overjoyed, but then realize that their bodies require maintenance now, and only Ernest can provide that. Helen suggests they drug him, and both women attempt to have Ernest drink an alcoholic drink with a drug in it. However, Ernest then considers that he drinks too much and refuses. In desperation, the girls hit Ernest over the head, knocking him unconscious. Ernest wakes up in the swimming pool chamber of Lyle's mansion, dressed in a tux. Lyle is throwing a party for her clients tonight, but has taken time to meet with Ernest at Madeline and Helen's request. Lyle shows Ernest the effects of the potion and encourages him to take it as well. However, Ernest is reluctant, seeing a downside to living forever. He'll watch all the people around him get old and die. His body could be injured in accidents, and he'll most likely end up having to cope with Madeline and Helen forever. Ernest attempts to escape, but first encounters Lyle's party. Ernest runs away with Helen and Madeline, as well as the guards in hot pursuit. Ernest ends up dangling precariously above the glass windows over the swimming pool, where Helen and Madeline find him. Ernest still has the potion in his possession, and the two at first plead, but then demand that he take the potion so he'll survive the fall. Realizing his importance to them, Ernest drops the potion and explains to the girls, "You're on your own," before plummeting into the glass and landing safely in the pool below. Ernest escapes the mansion in a vintage Porsche. Helen and Madeline, acting on Lyle's orders, attempt to track Ernest down, first returning to Madeline's place, only to find Ernest has already packed and headed for the airport. It is then that they realize that they are now stuck with each other and will have to help each other maintain their deteriorating appearances. 37 years later, Ernest finally dies, and a funeral is held for him. The preacher eulogizes about Ernest's accomplishments in those last 37 years. In the time he had left, Ernest made more of his life than he had previously, becoming a mountain climber, remarrying and having 6 children with his second wife, starting clinics for alcoholics, as well as an institution to understand and study women and their behaviors. During the sermon, the preacher claims that Ernest has obtained true immortality through his family and the lives of those he had touched through his generosity and giving nature. The preacher even mentions Ernest the prankster's longtime jokes about the living dead in Beverly Hills. In the back of the church, Helen and Madeline, wearing heavy black veils to cover up their faces, are listening. And upon hearing the priest's final words, Madeline mockingly says, "Blah, blah, blah," and the girls exit the church. Outside, the two women begin to argue before Helen accidentally slips on a spray paint she dropped. Helen is in danger of falling down the chapel steps, with Madeline just smiling smugly. However, Helen isn't going down alone and grabs her friend. The two of them tumble down the stairs before their bodies shatter into various pieces at the bottom. In their shattered state, Helen's decapitated head asks Madeline's head the one thing that is now on her mind. "Do you remember where you parked the car?"